It's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I'm inside and it is evening time. I haven't been outside recording in a while, but I have been doing some things and I'm just going to talk to you about those because we're having a heat wave and that makes it pretty miserable to go out in the daytime. So some things that I've got done inside, I've been doing some more canning. I'd went outside and picked the last of the blueberries, and I added that to some of my canned grapes, which I pureed in the blender. And out of that, I made a delicious blueberry syrup. I added sugar to it, some water. What else did I add? Oh, and lavender. Yeah, that's what I added. So I cooked that down and that will be really nice. I got 14 pints of it, but one jar broke as soon as I put it in the canner. And any of you who can, I know that you're familiar with that. It's not the end of the world, but what was too bad was it had a brand new ring on that jar. And I could not safely get that ring off, so I had to just throw it away, brand new ring and all. So I canned that. I also have canned boysenberry pie filling. And tomorrow I need to get out early in the day and pick more boysenberries. It's getting near the end of their time. And then who knows what I'll do with those. I might just eat them fresh. They're so good. So those are the things I've canned. I was really tickled that my neighbor tried the beef stew. I sent her over a jar of it with tomato base, that one, and she really loved it. I tell you, doing these convenient things is so handy, and they really are good. You can control how they taste. And I don't know, yeah, I did one of me canning the hamburger. So those are the things that I've canned this month. And I feel pretty good about that, considering that it is the Shemita year and I didn't plant. So I'm happy to have those things. Well, I have had a predator on our property, and it has been very disappointing. So first thing it got was my male duck, but I didn't realize that he was injured. And so I just noticed that when it was time for them to go in the hen house at night, because it's important that I lock them all up, he had a hard time getting into the hen house. The females could all hop right in and they did fine, but he would bump his chest on the step. It looked kind of funny, I gotta be honest. But after a few days, not too many, I noticed that he was just kind of laying on one side of the fence in a way that made me pretty uneasy. So after I finished doing whatever it was I was doing, I went to look for him. He was no longer there, but he had followed the females into the backyard, and I found him, and he was in terrible shape. He wasn't able to move faster than me. That's saying something. And I picked him up. I looked him all over. I could not see the injury, but it was obvious to me that it was likely going to be fatal. So I picked him up and I put him in the hen house so he'd be safe. And the next day I found him and he was dead. So at that point I didn't know what had happened. But a couple days later, I had left the door from the hen house or chicken house open to the compost because I had a pretty tall fence around that, and that way they could go out into that in the morning. And when I opened the door of the chicken house, there were 3 dead ducks. something had chewed off their heads. Now, I'm not positive still what it is, but what I suspect it is was a raccoon. I've never seen one on my property, but that's what I've always heard generally takes off the heads. So immediately that door to the compost got shut and is not going to be open again, which is sad because it was nice for them. So then I was down to 2 female ducks, and one of them was sitting in the greenhouse, and the other I suspect was sitting someplace else because sometimes I wouldn't see her for a couple days and then she'd be back. Well, I haven't seen her now for a while again. And that duck that had been sitting in the greenhouse, she'd been sitting there so long that I knew that surely any time her eggs should be hatching. And when I went out the other day, in the middle of last week, underneath my grape arbor, I saw 2 big piles of duck feathers, and then I found her head. So that was the end of her. So I went and gathered her eggs. I don't know if it was early in the morning that she got killed or if it had been the night before, but she was so careful whenever she would leave the eggs. She would bury them in her down. And so I went and gathered those eggs and I put them under another hen that was sitting. And I had one more hen that's been sitting out in the garden, and I decided not to risk her. So after it got dark, I went out and I gathered up her eggs, put them in a little cage that I had lined with sawdust, or fir shavings is what they really were. And then I picked her up and I packed her to the hen house, and she was inside this little cage. The next morning I went there and she was flipping out. She did not want to be there. She had scattered her eggs, but they were still warm. So what I did was I got the eggs gathered back, and then I had an old wheelbarrow body that had cracked, and a plastic one, and so we had taken it off and put a metal one on my wheelbarrow. And so I picked that plastic one up and I covered up her cage, not completely, but the front and 2 sides were covered pretty well. And that calmed her way down. So after 2 or 3 days, I was able to uncover her and she seemed very calm. Then I went out and I heard peeping. So I thought surely it was the hen that was sitting on so many eggs originally. And so I left it for the day. When I came back later to gather eggs, there was a hen who was tossing around a dead baby chick. So it had got out of the cage and had been killed. The mother hen, again, was all going crazy. So I opened the door to let her out before she busted everything, and underneath her was another little black chick that she had stomped, and it was dead. So that was it. I emptied out her cage, I grabbed the other eggs, and I shoved them under the sitting hen that is still sitting. She's been a very good mama. Went out today a couple times to check, maybe 3. And there are no babies hatched yet, and she's looking pretty haggard. She does have water and feed in there, but when they've been sitting a long time, their comb, which when they go in is beautiful red, is no longer red. So it's really disappointing when this happens. I have a couple live traps but I don't know how to use them. So I'm hoping to take a little time and YouTube how to use them. Or maybe somebody will just come by that knows how to use them. And I'd like to get rid of whatever that animal is that has wiped out my duck population. It's something that happens sometimes on a homestead. And it's sad, but it is a part of the cycle. So, I try not to worry too much about it. I had another hen that was attacked, but she made it. Now she's got a big bunch of feathers sticking out of her neck real far like this, where it got her on the neck, but she's okay. It's been several days. And I want to tell you a little update. This was interesting to me. I went out yesterday and the grass is really growing, and I don't get to go outside very much. As you know, my son has been having a lot of mini strokes, and so I stay inside with him most of the time. But I went outside yesterday changing water lines, and the grass is really growing, especially in the garden area. It was really bad. So I thought, I'm just going to see if I can start this weed eater. I've never been able to before. To start anything like that, or in years at least, a lawnmower or anything. It has a pull string. And I gave that about 4 or 5 pulls and it started. I didn't want to let it go out. I was not dressed appropriately. I usually have a face shield on, the ones that they had that were plastic for COVID. They work really good, at least till you get too much grass on them and you can't see. But they really do protect your face from whatever's flying. And I was wearing a dress and my sandals. Not the way that I wanted to be doing it, because it stings when that stuff hits you. But I got the garden yard almost completely weed-eated until it ran out of gas. So I went and I was going to try to just, refuel it and finish up. But my son had put on that cap so hard, I couldn't get it off. So that was the end of my weed eating till I get somebody over that can loosen that gas cap for me. So that's what's been going on here. Like I said, super hot. So I did really, really heavy watering yesterday in preparation for that, and everything seems like it handled it okay. And we handled it okay by watching a movie, although I gotta tell you, fell asleep during the movie. Second time in 2 days. Well, I hope whatever you're doing, you're being blessed. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Press the like button also and leave me a comment. What would you like to see me do or talk about? And I'll see if I can do it. Well, I want to pray blessings on you and yours, in your house, out of your house, in the day and the night. Whatever you do, keep dreaming. Bye.